I'm Tim Richards, author of the Exploring Jazz Piano books. This is the last clip I've made relating to Volume 2 of the book. In this clip, I'll show you some ways of splitting the notes of a chord between the hands, two-handed comping, a technique used by all professional pianists. We'll also look at polychords or upper structure voicings, a key method of visualizing complex harmonies, used frequently in post-bop jazz. When playing two-handed chords, it's usually best to avoid doubling any notes, starting with a root position chord in the left hand, for example C minor 7. The most basic two-handed voicing simply moves the middle notes, the third and fifth, up an octave. So now we have a root 7, 3, 5 voicing. We're left with the root and seventh in the left hand, which we could call a shell. When the chords follow the cycle of fifths, as in a 2-5-1, this usually alternates with the opposite voicing, root 3, 7, 9. That's on F7. So following it through to B flat, you end up on the same root 7, 3, 5 voicing you start with. Notice how we haven't changed the right hand for C minor to F7. However, if you wish, you can flatten the ninth at the top of the dominant voicing, causing the top notes to fall in semitones, which always sounds good. You can also raise the ninth if you enjoy the sound of the dominant 7th sharp 9 chord in the middle of the 2-5-1. You should practice these voicings round the cycle of 2-5-1s. If you're not sure how to do this, check out clip number 4 from the Volume 1, which goes into the cycles in detail. You could also try using track 31 from Volume 1 of the book as a backing for this with the piano silenced. In some keys, the configurations you've just played might be too low or too high. For that reason, it's important to learn your 2-5-1 voicings the opposite way round, with a root and third shell in the left hand on the minor chord. The right hand can no longer stay the same for 2 and 5, so the F in the G minor must move down to become the third of the C7 chord. We're finishing on root 3, 7, 9 on the F, just like we started out. Again, the top note of the 5 chord, currently the 13th, can be flattened. So the top note goes down in semitones again. That's with a sharp 5 chord on C7. And you could also, of course, play a flat 5. Although we've played around altering the top note of the 5 chord, none of these chords are fully altered chords, as these must contain both the sharp 5 or flat 5 and the sharp 9 or flat 9. To do this with shells in the left hand, we'll have to upgrade to 5-part harmony. We touched on two-handed 5-note voicings briefly in clip number 5 on 9th chords from the Volume 1 book at 5 minutes and 9 seconds. You might want to review this before going any further. Here's the 2-5-1 in B flat that we played earlier with an extra note added in the right hand, the 9th of the minor chord. To help you find and learn these voicings, memorize the starting configuration, root 7, 3, 5, 9. This is the same for C minor 7 and the chord we'll finish on, B flat major 7 or major 9. Here's the 2-5-1. Again, we haven't had to change anything for the C minor. The right hand can stay the same and it becomes F13. However, you could vary the middle chord and play an altered voicing on the F7. That's with the flat 9 in the middle. Here's the same chords with the sharp 9 in the middle. So those different types of altered chords we dealt with in the previous clip, number 4, altered scales and chords. The first has the flat 9, the second the sharp 9. You also need to be able to play these voicings the opposite way round, starting with root and third in the left hand, you'll be playing the same notes but in a different order. Again, memorize the starting configuration. We'll do it on G minor. Root 3, 7, 9, 5. Here we go. So we just need to drop one note in the G minor voicing in the right hand to make it into a 13th chord. If you play a flat 9 on the C7, the top notes will move down in semitones. If you play a sharp 9, the top notes can be made to rise in semitones. Both of these give a more interesting effect than the first example. These two-handed voicings are not only useful for comping, accompanying other musicians by playing chords behind their solos, they're also useful when playing melodies as a means of thickening the harmony. The next time you read a tune from a lead sheet, instead of playing the melody in single notes in the right hand, follow the chord symbols to generate two-handed voicings with the melody note on top. This technique is demonstrated time and time again in Volume 2, for instance in the arrangements given for standards such as Ladybird, Misty, Tune Up, Beautiful Love and others. Okay, I'm going to give you a couple of tips for playing from lead sheets. When you see a melody note that is the 9th of the chord, try to play either a root 3-7-9 or a root 7-3-5-9 voicing. Both of these give you the melody note, the 9th, on top. So you can find this in the book in tunes like Ladybird, Misty, Beautiful Love. Here's an example. Then A flat minor. So we had B flat minor 9 and A flat minor 9. Tip number 2 is for melody notes which are the 5th of the chord. When you spot these, try to play either root 7-3-5 or root 3-7-9-5. Both of these give you the 5th as the top note. You can find examples of this throughout Take the A Train, for instance, in Volume 1, page 64, or in Volume 2 in Ladybird and Beautiful Love. Here's an example. So D minor, 5th on top, G7 sharp 11, the flat 5 on top. So B flat with the 5th on top. Really useful technique, and it just gives you a slightly different sound from always playing chords in the left hand, single notes in the right hand. As well as practicing these 2-5-1 voicings round the cycle, I recommend practicing cycles of just one chord type only, perhaps starting with a cycle of dominant sevenths. I can demonstrate this with track number 18, Dominant Bebop Scale Workout, in Volume 2, page 99, with the piano silence to give me just bass and drums, 2 bars on each chord, starting on C7. I'll play two-handed 13ths on every chord, and as before, I'm alternating root and third with root and 7th shells in the left hand.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
While we're on the subject of dominant sevenths, I'd like to show you another way of visualizing and memorizing the many types of dominant voicings encountered in jazz. For instance, a sharp 11 chord is frequently thought of as including a major triad a tone up from the chord root, so that C7 sharp 11 can be played as a D triad in the right hand over C7 in the left hand. This is sometimes called a polychord, and you might see it notated as D over C7. This voicing is very flexible. You can alter the left hand to play rootless voicings. You can alter the inversion of the triad. Okay, various combinations of notes, but always a major triad in the right hand. This will give you a choice of 3 top notes. Any of the notes of the triad can be your melody note. There are many other possibilities for voicing complex chords with triads in the right hand. Sometimes experimentation can yield some interesting results. For instance, let's see what happens if we move the D triad in the C7 sharp 11 chord up a semitone. So we're playing E flat triad over C7. You can hear immediately that the E flat in the triad clashes in quite a dynamic way with the E natural in C7, producing a vibrant discord typical of the sharp 9 sound. In future, remember that you can voice sharp 9 chords with a triad a minor third up from the root. There are many other possibilities, but to cut the story short, flat 9 chords can be played with a triad a minor third down from the root. So minor third down from C is A7. That gives you the C sharp, which is your flat 9. Notice the symmetry. Minor third up for E flat for sharp 9, minor third down for flat 9. If you play a rootless chord in the left hand, make sure it doesn't have a regular 9th in it. Always aim for consistency between left and right hands. So here's the sharp 9 voicing. Make sure you don't leave the E out as well, or it'll sound like C minor. We can play it with a rootless voicing. And the flat 9 voicing can also be permutated. You may have noticed how the second inversion major triad shapes in these polychords are particularly effective. One really cool thing is how you can make these going down in semitones if playing round a cycle of dominant sevenths. You can do this by alternating the 2 polychords we've just been looking at for the flat 9 and sharp 9 chords. So C7 flat 9 with an A triad, that becomes an A flat triad, which gives you the sharp 9 of the F chord, becomes a G triad, the flat 9 of the B flat chord. Magic! Memorize these voicings round the cycle and try applying them in turnarounds or in bridges based on dominant 7th cycles such as rhythm changes. Some examples are given in the book on page 168. With a little ingenuity, you can also find triads that work for all 3 chords in a 2-5-1, not just the dominant chords. With a different set of shells. The remaining 2 polychords we'll look at are both for altered chords. The altered scale actually contains 2 major triads, one on the flat 5 and one on the sharp 5. For C7, those triads are A flat and G flat, which are a tone apart. A flat gives you the sharp 9 and the sharp 5, and play it with a C7 sharp 9 chord in the left hand, or with an altered voicing. G flat gives you the flat 9 and the flat 5. Again, we can move this up by playing altered voicings in the left hand. It can be quite effective to move from one triad to the other over the same altered chord. Between them, they give you 6 possible choices of melody note, 3 for each triad. If you play the triads in 4-note spread position with top and bottom note the same, and chunky 4-note rootless voicings in the left hand, you have a pretty heavy-duty 8-note voicing at your fingertips. In a different position. These are voicings you should stave for special occasions. For the last part of this clip, we'll turn our attention to half diminished chords and minor 2-5-1. Half diminished chords don't always obey the same rules that apply to the other chords we've dealt with so far. For a start, they don't always respond well to the addition of a ninth. In the key of C minor, which has three flats, B flat, E flat and A flat, the 2 chord is D minor 7, which includes the A flat from the key signature, as you'd expect. But if you add the ninth to it, it's an E natural, which is completely outside the key. So listen to how the rootless voicing would sound if we just use the same formula as we did before. That one's not too bad, but if you play it in this position, the D half diminished sounds very sharp, doesn't it? It's a bit too bright and quite discordant. So for that reason, many pianists avoid the 3-5-7-9 and 7-9-3-5 voicing routines for half diminished chords and retain the root in the chord in preference to the ninth. It's also common to find fourths added to minor 7 flat 5 voicings, sometimes even in preference to the third. So your D half diminished could be like this, or its inversion. Neither of those have the third in, they've got the fourth in the middle or on top. And two-handed versions could be like this, both of which have the same notes. The voicings on the right with 2 notes in each hand can be applied to other chord types too. They are often the comping voicings of choice when playing in a band or with a bass player. See my arrangement of Miles Davis's Tune-Up in the book, page 182-3. This has a comprehensive demonstration of major 2-5 sequences using these voicings. Check out the music at the beginning and end of this clip also. That uses similar comping, this time over rhythm changes. These are all shown in the book on pages 192 and 196. We're going to use them over a minor 1-6-2-5 turnaround. In minor keys, the 2 and 6 chords are both half diminished, so I'll avoid ninths on those chords. The other chords will all obey the same voicing rules as before. So I'm going to do this on track 43, minor turnaround workout, with bass and drums.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
So that was a turnaround in A minor. I first of all played comping voicings with shells in the left hand, 5-part harmony, and then for the second half I switched to this really light and airy 2 notes in each hand, rootless comping. Well, there are a few roots in there, but in general you avoid roots unless it's on half diminished chords. Let's do the same thing in the opposite configuration on the same track. This track goes through 6 keys. We're going to skip a key and jump to the G minor section. There's no better way to polish your minor comping than to play minor blues. Staying in the key of G minor, let's finish off with Blues in Fourths from Chapter 5 in Volume 2, track 45, page 266. The CD track gives you two-handed comping practice over bass and drums backing. I've included some quartal and so what voicings alongside the comping styles we've just been working on. Note how well they blend in stylistically.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Remember that if you silence the piano, you can use this track to practice whatever you like. Improvisation in the right hand, rootless voicings in the left hand, two-handed comping, etc. Have fun! Well, that's it for now. I've given you a little taste of some of the ground covered in the 5 chapters of Volume 2. There's plenty more there to keep you busy, lots of pieces to play too, all with audio tracks to play along with. Thanks for watching, hope you found it useful, and see you soon.